created for, to protect the people from a tyrannical government. Because when a major disaster hits the USA, a recent executive order allows FEMA to confiscate your food stockpile, and just like in the old USSR, to give it to the government-dependent masses. That's right. If you invested $30,000 or more in a survival stockpile, or you've been daydreaming about having enough food to last you a decade, then you've got to watch this urgent video. Hi, my name is Alec Deacon, and in this short and controversial presentation that will not be up for long, I'm going to expose how a devastating once-in-60-years event, along with corporate greed and corruption, are setting the stage for a social and economic time bomb that will detonate right in the middle of the U.S. I'll reveal how the impending collapse of the U.S. food supply system will steal the food from your kids' tables, leaving them hungry and helpless and forcing them to scavenge for scraps. I'll explain what you must do today to ensure that you and your family not only survive, but actually rise to the top of a fallen society when chaos rules and communities need someone to lead them. But that's not all. If you stick until the end of this very short presentation, I'll give you a somewhat weird but insanely effective way to build a 5-year, 10-year, even 20-year stockpile of super nutritious food that the government can't confiscate from you in a crisis. Best of all, this still secret method costs you up to 20 times less than you'd have to pay on survival food, literally just a few cents per meal. Like I said, my name is Alec Deacon. You may know me from my website, myfamilysurvivalplan.com, one of the fastest-growing Patriot sites. Or you may have seen my warnings on websites like WND.com, Infowars.com, or SHTFplan.com. I'm that guy who's bitterly clinging to his guns and Bibles, like the liberals love to say. You bet I am. Because I'm almost religious about my right to be independent, to bear arms, and to be able to feed myself and my family. That's why I've made it my life's purpose to expose to true patriots the hidden dangers that threaten our rights and our very existence. In my latest research, I've uncovered 4 shocking signs of an impending economic collapse that will cripple the food supply system and can force your family to struggle for mere survival. I call these signs the 4 horsemen of the food apocalypse because they bring with them a deadly social and economic crisis with immediate effects on your ability to feed your family. And if you don't act fast, if you don't act now, you're going to miss your chance forever, a chance to finally become self-sufficient and independent, a chance to make your family recession-proof and disaster-proof, while the unprepared zombies will be starving and killing each other over a loaf of rotten bread. The first horseman is hunger, and it came with the searing heat of last year. The summer of 2012 brought massive drought, devastation, and despair to farmers all over the globe. And we're just starting to feel the hard-hitting effects. World granaries like Russia and Kazakhstan were scorched by hellish temperatures. Crops in Ukraine were pummeled. Corn was reduced to desolating burnt stalks. And with a 15% drop in the Indian monsoon, a historical drought in Australia, and an appalling harvest in Mexico, no one was spared, not even the U.S. The worst drought since 1956 reduced farmland to moonscape, killed our corn and wheat exports. But above all, it forced farmers to slaughter their cattle prematurely because they had no food for them. And now in 2013, mainstream media is keeping Americans in the dark about the worst meat shortage in 60 years. But it gets worse. The unusual heat wave accelerated the depletion of the Ogallala Aquifer, the largest body of underground water in the U.S. and the #1 source of irrigation water for farmers. Couple that with abysmal rain levels in autumn and an incredibly warm winter, the experts are afraid 2013 could bring back the devastating Dust Bowl of the 30s. And that's just the beginning, because the second horseman is greed. Just as the drought was causing soy, corn, and meat prices to soar 10% alone in July 2012, the U.S. turned on the printing machine and dumped $2 trillion in the laps of the biggest banks through quantitative easing. The official story is that all this money should go back into the economy to help small businesses and people like you and I. Yet greedy banks invest this money into food commodities like corn and soy because they're way more profitable. So when they buy hundreds of millions of dollars worth of food, the global market takes a double punch. The result is a mass genocide that would make Hitler and Stalin envious. The criminal speculation in commodity prices is causing them to soar even higher, causing food inflation and mass starvation. Just look what happens when food prices immediately after a new quantitative easing is launched. Food inflation has hit the U.S. too, even if you don't see it, because while prices are staying still for the moment, packages keep getting smaller and smaller. 24 slices of cheese turned into a 22-slice package. 3 ounces of salmon shrank to 2.6 ounces. 18 ounces of peanut butter melted into 16.3 ounces. You now get 14 ounces of Lay's chips instead of 16, and the same goes for thousands of other food items. Sure, corrupt politicians will swear on the Bible there's no food inflation, while at the same time mortgaging our children's future. But inflation is everywhere, and it's so dangerous that last year Mexico's former president, Felipe Calderon, practically begged the banks to stop speculating in foods. He told Fox News, 4 years ago, more than 90% of the purchases of grains and food came from companies related to production or distribution of grains. Today, more than 40% are operations related to financial institutions. That's 4 times more speculation by irresponsible U.S. banks that makes everyone's food more expensive, causes inflation to spiral out of control, and forces millions of people to the soup lines. And that's when the real nightmare starts to unfold. That's when the third horseman starts galloping towards the U.S., and his name is chaos. President Calderon has a really good reason to panic. He knows that food prices are an almost perfect predictor of mass social unrest, and he's afraid that the tortilla riots of 2007 will be back. That's when more than 75,000 of the poorest Mexicans took to the streets after the price of corn for tortillas went from 8 pesos to 10 pesos per kilo overnight. Now that the drought is far worse than anything Mexico's seen in the last 50 years, mass riots seem certain. But it's not just Mexico that rose up against high food prices. Take a look at this chart. That's the Global Food Price Index, along with some of the most violent food riots in the last decade. See the pattern? In 2008, as the food price index was 200, there were bread riots in 61 different countries from Haiti to Bangladesh. In 2010, when a massive drought in Russia forced the country to halt wheat exports, millions of Arabs rebelled and created the Arab Spring revolutions. The September 2012 Benghazi killings had little to do with the Allah movie, analysts say, but with a sudden spike in food prices. And the bottom line is, whenever you have high food prices, you have mass social unrest, and people are overthrowing governments. So what's this got to do with the U.S. and with you? Everything. Because lately, not just traditionally poor countries are rioting. First world countries have been the theater of massive public violence, like Greece, the birthplace of democracy, or like Spain, where people are starting to raid supermarkets to get the food they need to survive. And now it's coming here. The fourth horseman of the food apocalypse is destruction, and he's hitting right in the heart of America. For the first time in almost a century, America is on the edge of a full-blown social and economic collapse, one that will make the Great Depression feel like a rehearsal. People no longer see the food lines, but they're longer than ever. Right now, over 46 million Americans are living on food stamps, enough to create a 25,000-mile food line that would surround the equator. 20 million of them are children. What do they think people will do when their children look at them with big, sad eyes, saying, "Daddy, I'm hungry"? You've seen how irresponsible unions killed the Twinkie. That's how fragile businesses really are. And when disaster strikes, all it takes is a few lockdowns of key sectors and the entire U.S. food supply system will freeze. What's really frightening is, the U.S. doesn't even have to be a war zone for you to be unable to feed your family. If trucks can't haul food across America, or if panicked mobs loot the superstores in your area, your family is left at the mercy of an incompetent government, and FEMA won't be able to help you, because they can't even help themselves. Having no food turns you into a beast. Ever tried skipping 3 meals or more? It messes with your head, and you'll have to beg, borrow, or steal just to feed your children. During the Great Depression, many children were forced to work in labor farms, and sometimes had to resort to prostitution just for a hot meal. Wives abandoned their husbands, hoping that it will be better on their own. Thousands of families fell apart because they lost all hope of surviving together. Yet when food is abundant, you have unlimited options. In a crisis situation, there's almost nothing that food can't pay for. Car broke down and you need a new battery? Food can get you a brand new one from a desperate family. Need someone to chop wood? In a depression, there'll be plenty of people willing to work for a meal. When the unthinkable happens, roles in society are reversed. Being able to read fancy spreadsheets might be useful today, but in a crashing society, it will put you at the bottom of the food chain. Adaptability, strength, and the ability to feed yourself and others, that's what makes you a true leader. The bottom line is, if you want your family to survive, you need your own food reserve, and you need it fast. But where to start? Hunting, fishing, or foraging might sound like a good idea until 500 desperate hunters are shooting at the same deer. People forget that game went almost extinct during the Great Depression. A good place to start is a 3-month stockpile of freeze-dried survival food. That will set you back around $1,900 for a family of 4. But the bigger problem is you simply can't rely on it for long-term survival. When the scenario that I'm talking about unfolds, you'll need at least 5 to 10 years' worth of food, and that will cost you as much as a brand new Mercedes. But the truth is, you can get as much healthy, nutritious food as you want at only a fraction of what you'd pay on freeze-dried survival food. Here's what it's all about. While I was doing research for my website, I stumbled on a rather weird technique called aquaponics that the people of Gaza were using in an arid war zone. Among falling missiles and mortars, those people are using this method to feed their families, even if they have no water, no money, no fertile soils, no space to grow food, and no time to do it either. I realized that if these people are using it at wartime, it would be the perfect source of food during an extended crisis. I was intrigued by this aquaponics story, so I asked my subscribers if they could help me with more information. The answer came from 8,000 miles away, from arid Australia. It was an aquaponic success story that blew me away. Battling record-setting temperatures and severe water restrictions, this guy had created his own little backyard miracle, spending 20 times less money on a survival stockpile than most preppers would.